They say blood is thicker than water, but nobody tells you that sometimes blood is also the thing that drowns you. I used to believe that family meant unconditional love, that the people who raised you would never intentionally hurt you, that loyalty was a two-way street paved with mutual respect and care. I couldn't believe how wrong I was. The truth, the shocking, humiliating truth, is that some families don't see you as a daughter, a sister, or even a person. They see you as a resource, an ATM machine wrapped in guilt and obligation, programmed to dispense cash and emotional labor on demand, without ever asking for anything in return. What happened next still feels surreal, like I'm watching someone else's life unfold in slow motion. I live in Boston now. They're in Seattle. My mom called me, sobbing, begging me to come home for Christmas because the family needed me. So I dropped everything, maxed out one of my cards for a last-minute flight, and flew across the country with my heart full of hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Then I opened that door and heard 6 words that changed everything. You're babysitting while we're in Cabo. Not, we missed you. Not, thank you for coming. Just casual exploitation dressed up as family responsibility, delivered with a laugh like my exhaustion was a punchline they'd all rehearsed. But here's the secret they didn't know. The truth I'd been hiding while they bled me dry for years. I'd been keeping receipts. Every wire transfer, every emergency payment, every subscription and bill and debt I'd covered while they posted vacation photos and shopping hauls on social media. $63,000 worth of receipts, to be exact. And in that kitchen, standing in front of my smirking brother and my unbothered parents, I realized something that made my hands stop shaking and my voice go cold. Revenge doesn't have to be loud or violent. Sometimes the most devastating payback is just the truth, delivered with a spreadsheet and a canceled credit card. What I did next destroyed their dream vacation, exposed years of financial betrayal, threatened their mortgage, and eventually forced them to face a reality they'd been avoiding, that their entire lifestyle was built on my silent suffering. This is the story of how I stopped being my family's ATM, reclaimed my dignity, and learned that sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And I need to warn you, if you've ever felt used by the people who are supposed to love you most, this story is going to hit differently, because what they did was shocking. But what I did back, that changed everything. I'll never forget the moment I stepped off that plane in Seattle. My hands were still shaking from the turbulence, my throat tight from my mom's tearful voicemail. Please, sweetheart, we need you home for Christmas. I couldn't believe how desperate she sounded, how broken. So I dropped everything in Boston, bought a last-minute ticket, and flew across the country because that's what daughters do, right? But when I opened that front door, there was no hug waiting for me. No warmth, just my mom's flat voice cutting through the cold air. Oh good, you're here. Jason and Amanda need you to watch the kids while we're in Cabo. The truth hit me like a slap, and I felt something inside me shut down completely. My brother Jason was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone with this smug little grin plastered on his face. Amanda, his wife, didn't even look up from packing her suitcase, just tossed a diaper bag in my direction like I was the hired help. My dad laughed, actually laughed, when he saw my face. What's wrong, Kinsley? You look exhausted. Perfect for babysitting. They all chuckled like it was some inside joke, like my exhaustion was entertainment. I stood there in the doorway, jet-lagged and humiliated, realizing this entire emergency was a setup. And right then, watching them mock my devotion, something inside me switched off, like a circuit breaker tripping after years of electrical overload. I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I just walked slowly into the kitchen, set my bag down, and felt this eerie calm wash over me. On the ride from SeaTac, I'd already made the decision. It was the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm, the kind that makes your ears ring. My mom followed me, still talking about schedules and bedtimes, completely oblivious to the shift happening inside me. She didn't notice my hands weren't trembling anymore. She didn't see the way my jaw set, or how my eyes stopped searching hers for validation. Because for the first time in my 30 years of being the family's emotional ATM, I wasn't asking myself what I did wrong. I was asking myself what I was about to do right. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop, placing it carefully on the kitchen counter. My mom paused mid-sentence, confused by the deliberate way I was moving. "Kinsley, honey, are you listening?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and said something that made the entire room go silent. "Mom, there's one sentence I need to say, and after I do, your dream vacation is going to disappear, and this house might be next." Her face drained of color. Jason appeared in the doorway. My dad's laughter died in his throat, and I knew, right then, that everything was about to change. The kitchen felt like it had been vacuum sealed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My dad's hand froze halfway to his coffee mug, and I watched Jason's smug grin collapse into something that looked almost like fear. Amanda stopped zipping her suitcase in the living room. I could hear the silence spreading through the house like ice. My mom's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. But no sound came out. It was beautiful, in a twisted way, watching them realize that for once, I wasn't bluffing. For once, the family punching bag had teeth, and they could see every single one. "Kinsley, what are you talking about?" My dad finally managed, his voice doing that thing where he tries to sound authoritative but comes off defensive. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened my laptop slowly, deliberately, letting the suspense build. I could feel their eyes drilling into me, could sense the panic starting to bubble up beneath their confusion. My mom reached for my arm, that classic move she does when she wants to manipulate me back into compliance. But I shifted away. "I'm talking about the truth," I said quietly. "The shocking, humiliating, betrayal-soaked truth that I've been too blind to see for years." Jason pushed off the doorframe and walked toward me, trying to reclaim control of the situation. "Jesus, Kinsley, you're being dramatic. We just need you to watch the kids for a week. It's not that deep." Mar. His voice had that dismissive edge, that casual cruelty I'd normalized for so long. But this time it didn't land. This time, I looked at him and felt nothing but cold clarity. "Oh, it's deep, Jason. Deeper than you can possibly imagine." I pulled up a folder on my desktop. Months of work, spreadsheets, bank statements, receipts, all organized with the precision of someone preparing for war. Because that one sentence I'm about to say, it's going to destroy the vacation, expose the lies, and possibly cost you this house. The air in that kitchen was suffocating. My mom's hand went to her throat, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Was it guilt? Recognition? Or just the fear of consequences finally catching up? My dad's face turned red, that familiar anger rising. But before he could explode, I held up one finger. Just one. A silent warning that I was in control now. "Before I say it," I whispered, my voice steady and cold, "I want you all to remember this moment. Remember how you laughed at me in that doorway. Remember how you've treated me for years." I let the words hang there, heavy and suffocating. And then I smiled. A smile with no warmth, no forgiveness. Just payback waiting to be served. But before I dropped that bomb, I needed them to understand the full picture. I needed them to see the pattern they'd been running on me like a well-oiled machine. "Let me take you back," I said, closing my laptop for a moment and leaning against the counter. "Let me show you how we got here." My mom tried to interrupt. "Kinsley, this isn't the time for—" But I cut her off with a look so sharp it could have drawn blood. For once, she actually shut up. For once, they were all going to listen to me without talking over me, without dismissing me, without turning my pain into their punchline. It started 3 years ago, maybe longer if I'm being honest with myself. The first call came on a Tuesday night. I remember because I was in the middle of a work presentation. My mom's voice, trembling and desperate. "Honey, I hate to ask, but we're short on the mortgage this month. Just this once. Could you help us out? Just this once." Those 3 words became the soundtrack of my financial destruction. I wired her $2,000 that night, my stomach twisting with guilt for even hesitating. A month later, it was my dad needing help with a car repair, then Jason's credit card debt, then unexpected medical bills, then. Each time the same phrase. Just this once. But here's the thing about just this once. It's never just once. It's a trap. A lie wrapped in family loyalty and emotional manipulation. While I was wiring money for their emergencies, my mom was posting Instagram stories from brunch spots that cost more than my grocery budget. My dad was buying new golf clubs. Jason and Amanda were upgrading their cars, their wardrobes, their entire lifestyle. And me? I was eating ramen in my studio apartment, working overtime, skipping vacations, and telling myself I was being a good daughter. I couldn't believe how blind I'd been, how thoroughly they'd backstab me while I smiled and nodded and played the role of the family ATM. The requests came in waves, relentless and suffocating. Subscriptions I didn't know existed, suddenly on autopay from my account. Emergency vet bills for a dog I'd never even met. School supplies, birthday parties, home repairs, all labeled as crises that only I could solve. And every single time I sent money, there was this moment of warmth, this brief window where I felt valued and needed. They'd thank me, tell me I was saving them, promise it would never happen again. But within weeks, sometimes days, another text would arrive, another crisis, another just this once. And like an addict chasing a high, I kept paying, kept bleeding myself dry, because the alternative, admitting I'd been used, was too painful to face. I opened my laptop again, and this time I turned the screen toward them. The spreadsheet glowed in the dim kitchen light, rows and rows of dates, amounts, descriptions, all color-coded and meticulously organized. My mom stepped closer, squinting at the numbers, and I watched her face go from confused to pale in about 3 seconds. "What is this?" she whispered, but I could tell she already knew. She just didn't want to admit it. My dad leaned in too, his eyes scanning the columns, and I saw his jaw tighten. Jason stayed back, suddenly very interested in his phone, but I could see his hands shaking slightly. "This," I said, my voice calm and precise, "is every single transfer I've made to this family in the last 36 months. Every wire, every Venmo, every check, every credit card payment I covered on your behalf. Dates, amounts, what you told me it was for." I scrolled down slowly, letting them see the sheer volume of it. Emergency mortgage payments that happened every 3 months like clockwork. Car repairs that somehow cost more than a new car would. Medical bills for conditions that mysteriously disappeared after I paid. Subscriptions to services they didn't need but couldn't live without. Grocery money, utility bailouts, debt consolidation. The list went on and on, a monument to my own financial self-destruction. "And here," I said, pointing to a cell at the bottom that was highlighted in red, "is the total." The number sat there, bold and undeniable. $63,847.32. $63,847.32. 3 years of my salary, my savings, my future, drained into the black hole of their lifestyle. My mom gasped, actually gasped, and started shaking her head. "That can't be right. That's not—" "Kinsley, you're making this look worse than it is." My dad's face turned from pale to red, that familiar rage building. "What the hell is this? Are you seriously keeping score? We're family." Jason finally spoke up, his voice defensive and sharp. "You're making us look bad on purpose. This is manipulative." But I didn't flinch. I'd prepared for this. The denial, the anger, the accusation that I was the villain for simply showing them the truth. "I'm not making you look bad," I said, my voice dropping to something cold and final. "You did that yourselves. I'm just showing you the receipts." I pulled up another tab, screenshots of text messages, voicemails, emails, all asking for money while simultaneously posting photos of shopping hauls and vacation planning. The cognitive dissonance was stunning. They needed me to survive, apparently, while also living better than I ever could. The humiliation of seeing it all laid out like that, not just for me, but for them too, was exactly the payback I'd been craving. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder, the kind lawyers use, and set it on the counter with a soft thud that somehow sounded deafening. My mom's eyes locked onto it like it was a bomb. My dad took a step back. Jason's cocky demeanor finally cracked completely. "What's that?" Amanda asked from the doorway, her voice thin and nervous. I didn't answer her. Instead, I opened the folder slowly and pulled out a single sheet of paper, professionally formatted, notarized, with signature lines at the bottom. "This," I said, sliding it across the counter toward my parents, "is an acknowledgement agreement." My dad picked it up, his hands actually trembling now, and started reading. I watched his face go through the stages of grief in real time. Denial, anger, bargaining, all compressed into about 15 seconds. "You want us to sign a document saying we owe you money? Are you serious right now?" His voice was loud, aggressive, trying to intimidate me back into submission. But I'd spent 3 months with a financial advisor and a lawyer preparing for the day I finally stopped saving them. I knew my rights. I knew what I could enforce. And most importantly, I knew that without this paper, they'd gaslight me into oblivion and claim every cent was a gift given freely out of love. "It's not about whether you owe me," I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "It's about making sure we all agree on what actually happened here. Because I'm done being painted as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family. I'm done being the villain in your story when I've been bleeding myself dry to fund your lives." My mom reached for the paper, her eyes scanning the words, and I saw something break in her expression. Guilt, maybe. Or just the realization that I'd outmaneuvered them. "Kinsley, this feels like you don't trust us," she said, her voice doing that wounded thing she does so well. "Trust?" I almost laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. "Mom, trust is earned, and you've spent 3 years proving I can't trust any of you." I tapped the paper with my finger. "This isn't about punishment. It's about protection. Because the next time you try to rewrite history, the next time you tell people I chose money over family, the next time you make me the bad guy, I'll have proof. Legal, notarized, undeniable proof that every dollar was extracted through manipulation and lies." The kitchen went silent again. Jason backed up toward the living room. Amanda disappeared completely. And my parents stood there, staring at that piece of paper like it was a death sentence. They refused to sign that night. Fine. My lawyer served it anyway, formally, so they couldn't rewrite history later. My mom set the paper down with shaking hands, and that's when I decided to drop the real bomb. "But here's the thing," I said, pulling up my phone and opening my banking app. "Before we get into legal agreements and payment plans, there's something you should know about your dream vacation to Cabo." I watched my dad's face shift from anger to confusion. Jason reappeared in the doorway, suddenly very interested in where this was going. My mom's eyes went wide, and I could see her brain working overtime, trying to figure out what I was about to say. The truth was about to hit them harder than any spreadsheet ever could. "Remember 6 months ago when you said the resort booking system wasn't working? When Dad's credit card kept getting declined? I didn't wait for them to answer. I fixed it for you. I put the entire vacation on my other card, the one I kept for emergencies. Flights, resort, excursions, everything. You said you'd pay me back before the trip. I held up my phone so they could see the confirmation emails, the booking references, all in my name. Funny thing about that, I never saw a single dollar. Not one. But I did see photos of Mom's new designer handbag last week and Dad's upgraded golf membership. So I made a decision. I swiped through my phone with deliberate slowness, letting the suspense build. My mom's hand went to her mouth. My dad's face turned from red to gray. "Kinsley, what did you do?" Jason asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked up at them, and for the first time in years, I felt powerful. Not vindictive, not cruel, just finally, beautifully in control. On the ride from the airport, I canceled everything, I said simply. The flights, the resort, the car rental, the excursions, all of it. Your vacation doesn't exist anymore. The explosion was immediate. My dad slammed his hand on the counter, shouting about how I couldn't do this, how this was theft, how I was destroying the family. My mom burst into tears, real ones this time, not the manipulative kind, wailing about how they'd been planning this for months. Jason started pacing, running his hands through his hair, muttering about how he'd already arranged time off work. Amanda was frantically checking her phone, probably trying to rebook, only to realize that without my credit card, they couldn't afford any of it. The chaos was beautiful, and into that chaos I said very quietly, "No babysitting. No trip. Not without my money." My dad was still shouting, his face purple with rage, when I held up my hand and said, "We're not done yet." That shut him up faster than anything else could have. The room fell into a suffocating silence again, and I could see the fear creeping into their eyes. They were starting to realize this wasn't just about a canceled vacation. This was about something much bigger, much more devastating. I pulled up my email on my laptop and turned the screen toward them once more. "There's one more thing you need to see," I said, my voice so calm it was almost eerie. The email was from my mortgage broker, dated 3 years ago. My mom leaned in to read it, and I watched the blood drain from her face completely. "Oh, God," she whispered. My dad grabbed the laptop, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The subject line was simple: co-borrower confirmation, 847 Maple Street, Seattle. Their address, their house, my name. Jason pushed between them to read, and I heard him suck in a sharp breath. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, but his voice had lost all its edge. He sounded scared now, and he should be. "You remember when you were about to lose the house?" I asked, looking directly at my mom. "When the bank was going to foreclose because you'd missed 6 months of payments?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Not now. "You begged me to help. You said it was temporary, that you just needed someone with good credit to co-sign the refinance. You promised it wouldn't affect me, that it was just a formality." I laughed, but it was hollow and bitter. "Turns out being a co-borrower isn't a formality. It means I'm legally responsible for every missed payment, every late fee, every dollar of that mortgage. The refinance saved you, temporarily. After that, the short on the mortgage calls kept coming every few months." I pulled up another document, this one from my financial advisor, outlining exactly what my co-borrower status meant: the liability, the credit impact, the legal exposure. "So here's where we are," I said, my voice dropping to something cold and final. "I'm on the hook for a house I don't live in, can't access, and don't benefit from. And if you default, which, given your spending habits and my sudden lack of financial support, seems pretty likely, my credit gets destroyed right along with yours." My mom started to speak, but I cut her off. "But here's the reality. I can't wave a wand and disappear from this loan. The only way out is you refinance me out or you sell, and I'm done keeping it afloat." My lawyer already drafted the formal demand. I pulled out my phone again and opened a different app, the one connected to all the auto-pay accounts I'd set up over the years. My mom watched me, her face a mask of growing horror, as if she could sense what was coming. "You know what's funny?" I said, scrolling through the list. I didn't even realize how deep this went until I started looking. Utilities, streaming services, cell phone bills, insurance premiums, gym memberships, subscription boxes. Even your Netflix and Spotify are on my card. I looked up at them, and the humiliation on their faces was almost satisfying enough to make up for the years of financial abuse. Almost. "Every single one of these," I continued, tapping each entry as I spoke, "has been quietly draining my account for months, some for years. You never asked if I minded. You never offered to switch them over. You just let me keep paying because it was easier than dealing with it yourselves." My dad tried to interrupt, his voice rising again, but I spoke over him. "And the best part? Half of these you don't even use. I'm paying for a gym membership you haven't visited in 8 months, Dad. A subscription box for organic dog treats when you don't even have a dog anymore." The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. I started removing my payment methods and turning off autopay, one by one, right there in front of them. Each tap of my finger was like cutting a string, severing the invisible support system that had kept their lifestyle inflated while mine deflated. "Kinsley, stop. You can't just—" My mom started, but I kept going. Electric, water, internet, phones. The services stayed on. The bills just stopped landing on me. Cell phones, all 4 lines, including Jason's and Amanda's. Car insurance, home security system. The list went on, and with each change, I felt lighter, freer, like I was shedding weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. My dad's face went from angry to panicked as he realized the full scope of what I was doing. "You're destroying us," he finally exploded, slamming both hands on the counter. "This is betrayal, Kinsley. This is you choosing money over your own family." His voice echoed through the house, raw and desperate. I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, really looked at him, and felt absolutely nothing. No guilt. No doubt. Just clarity. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "This is me choosing myself over being your ATM. There's a difference." I picked up my bag, slipped my laptop inside, and walked toward the door. "You have until the end of the month to figure out your bills. After that, you're on your own." I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Not when my mom called my name from the doorway. Not when my dad shouted threats about disowning me. Not when Jason ran after me, trying one last manipulation tactic disguised as brotherly concern. I ordered a ride share and left without looking back, leaving the neighborhood I'd grown up in, the house I'd saved from foreclosure, the family that had bled me dry for years. And I went straight to the one place they knew nothing about. My secret sanctuary, my escape plan, my proof that I'd been preparing for this moment longer than I'd admitted even to myself. The condo was in downtown Seattle, a sleek one-bedroom on the 14th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I'd bought it 8 months ago, using the last reserves of my savings before they could be drained completely. Nobody knew about it. Not my parents. Not Jason. Not a single soul in my family. It was my insurance policy, my exit strategy, the physical manifestation of self-worth I'd been building in secret, while they assumed I had nothing. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the silence hit me like a wave. But this time, it was peaceful. No demands, no guilt trips, no invisible bleeding. I set my bag down and walked to the windows, staring out at the city lights beginning to flicker on in the early evening. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with me. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to scream, but mostly I just felt empty, hollowed out, like I'd been carrying so much for so long that now, without the weight, I didn't know how to stand properly. I sank onto the couch. My couch, paid for with my money, in my space, and let myself feel everything I'd been pushing down in that kitchen. The betrayal, the humiliation, the rage, the grief. But underneath all of that, buried beneath the pain and the chaos, there was something new, something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the fake kind you perform for other people, but real, bone-deep quiet, the kind that comes when you stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. I thought I'd feel guilty. I thought the family programming would kick in and I'd be drowning in shame by now, reaching for my phone to apologize and fix everything. But I didn't. I just sat there in my secret condo, alone for the first time in what felt like forever, and realized that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let everyone else sink. The peace lasted exactly 1 week. 7 days of silence, of healing, of learning how to exist without the constant financial bleeding. Then my phone started blowing up. Text messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Facebook friend requests from people who'd never cared about me before. And then I saw it. My dad's post, pinned to the top of his profile, shared already dozens of times. My stomach dropped as I read the words, each one carefully chosen to paint me as the villain in a story where I'd been the victim all along. "It's with a heavy heart that I share this publicly," the post began, dripping with performative grief. "Our daughter Kinsley has chosen money over family. After everything we've done for her, all the love and support we've given, she's abandoned us in our time of need. She's refused to help with basic family responsibilities and has cut us off financially over a minor disagreement. We raised her better than this. We're heartbroken and asking for prayers during this difficult time." The comments below were exactly what he wanted. Outrage on his behalf. People calling me selfish and ungrateful. Distant family members I barely knew weighing in about respect and loyalty and family values. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling the old familiar shame trying to creep back in. The urge to defend myself publicly was overwhelming. to screenshot my spreadsheets and blast them all over social media, to tell my side of the story, to expose them the way they were exposing me. But my lawyer's voice echoed in my head from our last meeting. Don't engage publicly. Don't defend. Don't explain. It won't matter to people who've already chosen to believe their narrative. Just document everything and protect yourself legally. So I took screenshots of the post, saved them to my evidence folder, and didn't comment. But the screenshots didn't stop the fallout. My inbox filled with messages from family members who wanted to understand my side, but really just wanted gossip. My mom's friends started subtly unfriending me on social media. Even some of my own friends reached out, confused by the public narrative, asking if everything was okay. The humiliation was suffocating. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I was watching in real time as my family rewrote history and turned me into the villain. And the worst part? Some people were believing it. Some people were choosing their version over the truth. And there was nothing I could do about it except hold on to my receipts and wait for karma to do its work. 3 weeks after I walked out, the letters started arriving at their house. I got the notices too, because my name was on the loan. But Jason was the one panicking enough to text me a photo of one, his message short and desperate. We need to talk. The image showed an official-looking envelope from the mortgage company, the kind with bold red letters that say, urgent, and action required. I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at that photo, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sadness. This was it. The consequences I'd warned them about. The reality they'd refused to believe would actually happen. The house of cards was finally collapsing, and I was watching from a safe distance. A week later, Jason showed up at my office. I don't know how he found out where I worked, but there he was in the lobby, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usual swagger was completely gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. When I came down to meet him, he didn't even try to hug me or make small talk. He just said, "Can we get coffee?" His voice was quiet, stripped of all the sarcasm and condescension I'd grown up with. We sat in a cafe across the street, and for the first time maybe ever, my brother actually listened when I spoke. "They're drowning," he said finally, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "Mom's selling her jewelry. Dad canceled his golf membership. The bank sent another letter yesterday. They have 90 days to refinance or they're starting foreclosure proceedings." He looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Understanding. Real, painful understanding. "I didn't know, Kinsley. I mean, I knew they asked you for money sometimes, but I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know you were basically funding our entire lives." His voice cracked slightly, and I realized he was telling the truth. "I started looking at my own finances after you left," Jason continued, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup like he needed something to hold on to. "Amanda and I sat down and actually went through everything. The kids' daycare? You were covering half. Our car payments? You'd been sending money for those too, disguised as loans that were never supposed to be paid back. Even our grocery delivery service was on your card." He laughed, but it was bitter and hollow. "We were living above our means and didn't even realize it because you were the invisible safety net. And when you pulled that net away, we all fell. Hard. I wanted to feel satisfaction, but mostly I just felt tired." Over the next 2 months, I watched from a distance as their entire lifestyle unraveled. It started small. My mom's Instagram posts became less frequent, then stopped altogether. The brunch photos disappeared. The shopping haul stories vanished. Instead, her profile went quiet, like she couldn't bear to show the world what was really happening behind the carefully curated facade. My dad deleted his Facebook entirely after someone commented on his smear campaign post asking why he needed money if he could afford golf and expensive dinners. The public image they'd worked so hard to maintain was crumbling, and without my financial support to prop it up, there was nothing left but the truth. Jason sent me occasional updates, not asking for anything, just keeping me informed like he thought I deserved to know. "Mom's selling furniture on Craigslist," one text read. "Dad traded in his car for something older. Then, they're downsizing, looking at apartments." Each message was a small confirmation that the consequences were real, that actions actually had repercussions, that you couldn't bleed someone dry forever and expect them to keep smiling. I didn't respond to most of them, but I read every single one, feeling that strange mixture of vindication and grief that comes with watching people you once loved face the reality they'd created. The most shocking update came 6 weeks after our coffee meeting. Jason sent me a photo of my dad's truck, the one he'd bragged about for years, the symbol of his success, being repossessed from their driveway. "He's devastated," the text said, "but he still won't admit that this is partly his fault. He keeps saying you did this to us, that you destroyed the family." I stared at that photo for a long time, at my dad standing in the background looking smaller and older than I remembered. Part of me wanted to feel guilty. Part of me wanted to rush over there and fix everything like I always had, but I didn't, because this wasn't my revenge. This was just karma, finally showing up to collect. The neighbors noticed too. I heard through a mutual friend that the whispers had started, about the for sale sign that appeared in the yard, about the sudden absence of their cars, about how they'd stopped hosting their usual elaborate parties. The same people who'd believed my dad's social media sob story were now seeing the reality with their own eyes. Some probably felt vindicated in their judgment of me, but others, the smarter ones, started asking questions, started wondering why a family that claimed to have done everything for their daughter was suddenly falling apart so completely the moment she stopped sending money. The truth has a way of revealing itself, even when people try to bury it. Christmas came around again, exactly 1 year after that Christmas flight, after the day I walked through their front door and realized the truth. I was sitting in my condo, alone but not lonely, when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment I thought about not answering. Maybe it was Jason. Maybe it was another family ambush. But something made me look through the peephole. And there she was, my mom, but not the version I'd grown up with. This woman looked smaller somehow, older, stripped of all the performance and polish. No designer bag, no fresh manicure, just my mother, holding an envelope and looking terrified. I opened the door slowly, and we stood there staring at each other for what felt like an eternity. She didn't try to hug me, didn't launch into excuses or explanations. She just said, "Can I come in?" Her voice was quiet, stripped of all the manipulation I'd learned to recognize. I stepped aside and let her enter, watching as she took in my space. The condo she'd never known existed. The life I'd built in secret while funding theirs. She didn't ask how I afforded it. She didn't make comments or judgments. She just stood in my living room, clutching that envelope, looking like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. "I sold my grandmother's ring," she said finally, holding out the envelope. "And some other things. Jewelry, mostly. Things I'd been holding on to for years." She set it on my coffee table, and I could see her hands shaking. "It's not enough. It's not even close to what we owe you. But it's a start." I looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it. "Kinsley, I need you to know something," she continued, her voice breaking. "We used you. I used you. I told myself we were just borrowing, that we'd pay you back, that it was what family does. But the truth is, we got comfortable bleeding you dry. We stopped seeing you as our daughter and started seeing you as a resource." She sat down on my couch without being invited, and I saw tears running down her face. Real ones this time, not the performative crying I'd seen 1,000 times before. "Your father is still in denial. He still thinks you're the problem, that you're selfish and cruel for cutting us off. But I can't lie to myself anymore." She looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my mother's eyes before. Genuine shame. "I want to try again. Not the old way. I know that's over, but maybe we could have one Christmas together. Just us. No money, no manipulation. Just honest." Her voice was so small, so broken, that for the first time in a year I felt something soften inside me. I didn't give my mom an answer that day. I told her I needed time to think, to process, to decide if I even had the emotional capacity to let her back in. She nodded, didn't push, and left quietly. But 2 days later, my phone lit up with notifications. My dad had posted again. Another public rant, Another attempt to paint me as the villain, this time claiming I'd brainwashed my mother and was tearing the family apart from the inside. I read it once, felt the familiar anger rising, and then I did something I should have done months ago. I blocked him. Permanently. Completely. No hesitation. The moment I hit that block button, something shifted inside me. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. There was no thunder, no sudden revelation. Just a quiet sense of finality, like closing a door I'd been holding open for too long. My dad had made his choice. He'd chosen his ego over accountability, his victim narrative over the truth, his need to be right over having a relationship with his daughter. And I realized something profound in that moment. I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need his love if it came with the price tag of my dignity and self-worth. Some people will never change, and that's not my burden to carry. Christmas Eve arrived, and I spent it exactly how I wanted. Alone in my condo, with Chinese takeout and a movie I'd been wanting to watch. No family drama, no forced smiles, no silent tallying of how much this gathering was costing me emotionally or financially. Just peace. Real, genuine, hard-won peace. My phone buzzed once. A text from my mom asking if the offer for Christmas was still open. I thought about it for a long time, staring at those words, weighing the risk against the possible reward. Finally, I replied, "Next year, if you can prove the boundaries are real, if you can show me that change isn't just words." I set my phone down and looked out at the city lights, thinking about everything I'd learned in the past year, the truth that had been staring me in the face all along, but that I'd been too afraid to see. People who genuinely love you will adapt to your boundaries. They'll respect your limits. They'll change their behavior when they see it's hurting you. But people who only benefit from your sacrifice, they'll call you selfish the moment you stop bleeding for them. They'll rewrite history, play the victim, and try to guilt you back into your cage. And the most liberating thing I'd ever realized was this. Their discomfort with my boundaries was not my emergency to fix. I've spent a lot of time thinking about loyalty since that day I came home, about what it really means, and who gets to define it. My family used that word like a weapon. Loyalty meant silence, meant sacrifice, meant bleeding yourself dry while they lived comfortably on your dime. But I've learned that real loyalty goes both ways. Real love doesn't drain you until there's nothing left. Real family doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. And the hardest lesson of all? Sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones most willing to destroy you for their own comfort. I think about all the years I spent convincing myself that their treatment was normal, that all families operated this way, that my exhaustion and resentment were signs of my own selfishness, rather than their exploitation. The gaslighting was so subtle, so consistent, that I'd internalized it completely. Every time I hesitated to send money, I felt guilty. Every time I considered saying no, I felt like a bad daughter. They'd trained me so well to prioritize their needs over my own survival that I didn't even recognize the abuse until I was drowning in debt, and they were planning vacations on my credit card. But here's what I know now. What I wish I'd known then. Reclaiming your life from people who've been using you isn't betrayal. It's survival. Setting boundaries with family members who've treated you like an ATM isn't cruelty. It's self-worth. And walking away from people who only value you for what you can provide isn't abandonment. It's liberation. The guilt will try to pull you back. The old programming will whisper that you're being selfish, that you're destroying the family, that you'll regret this someday. But I'm here to tell you, the only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. If the people draining your finances, your energy, your sanity, your future, if those people happen to share your last name, does that obligation ever end? Would you keep paying, keep sacrificing, keep bleeding just to be called loyal? Or would you choose yourself first? Walk away from the guilt and build a life where your worth isn't measured by your bank account. Because I chose myself, and for the first time in 30 years, I can finally breathe. So here's what I need to know from you, because this conversation can't end here. Have you ever been in a situation where family treated you like a bank account with legs? Where saying no felt impossible because the guilt was programmed into you from childhood? I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Tell me about the moment you realized you were being used, or the time you finally set a boundary and watched everything explode. Were you called selfish, ungrateful, a betrayer of family values? Because I guarantee you're not alone, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally choose themselves. And here's the harder question. If you're still in it, still sending money, still sacrificing, still bleeding yourself dry for people who only call when they need something, what's stopping you? Is it guilt? Fear of being the villain? The hope that maybe this time they'll change? Talk to me in the comments. Be honest. Be raw. This is a judgment-free zone because I've been exactly where you are, and I know how suffocating that invisible cage can feel. What would it take for you to walk away? What's the line they'd have to cross before you finally say enough? But let me leave you with this final thought. The one that kept me awake on Christmas Eve in my secret condo, staring at the city lights. You can't save people who are committed to drowning. You can't fix family members who see your boundaries as betrayal and your self-worth as selfishness. At some point, you have to choose between their comfort and your survival. And if that makes you the villain in their story, good. Let them rewrite history. Let them play victim on social media. Because you'll be too busy building a life where your value isn't measured by how much you're willing to lose. If this story resonated with you, if it made you angry, made you cry, or made you realize something about your own life, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'm not done telling these stories. Every week, I'm bringing you real, raw, unfiltered insights about family betrayal, toxic relationships, financial manipulation, and the brutal process of reclaiming your life from people who think they own you. These aren't fairy tales with happy endings. They're survival guides for anyone who's ever been gaslit into thinking their pain doesn't matter. So subscribe, stay connected, and let's keep having these uncomfortable, necessary conversations. Because the truth will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off.